happens in New York all the time. You have a lovely couple who's just starting out and they want to buy, you know, a small 2-bedroom or whatever, and they want to spend $900,000, and, you know, it really works for them and they can buy that and build. And the next thing you know, here comes, you know, someone who's buying a pied-à-terre, or someone who's buying an apartment outright for their daughter who's going to go to college, and they pay cash, and, you know, it skews the whole.
You know, you feel bad, and you know, like up here, we encourage writing letters. And it also is how you know, it depends on the seller and how you work with the seller, because there are those that do sympathize, or they have been in that position before, or you know, let them understand that they have been in that position before. And who do you want to pass your home on to? And also the other thing about, you know, cash versus, you know, financing is what we're finding up here, especially because they've never seen a market like this up here. It's so fast moving. And again, in my 15 years up here, I've never seen this. So the titles are taking longer to get back. So what I've expressed to some people is, you know, if you have a cash offer of 10, 20, whatever, on a smaller deal, more, and versus a cash deal, you may wait just as long, because a lot of people up here are really great with the financing. Some of these agents are really quick. So you may get your financing before a title comes back for a cash buyer. So, you know, again, it goes to, you know, explaining that as we do, you know, deal with our sellers.
Are you having appraisal issues?
Not me. No, you know, and again, like I tell my agents, I've never up here had an issue except once, I think once. You know, it was in a transitioning market in Hudson, but he bought it anyway. You know, it appraised at half. It was actually the Maker Hotel, which is anchoring the town. It's extraordinary. You know, he paid $3 million, which was unheard of in about 8 years ago, unheard of. And it appraised for $1.5 million. They've never seen anything, but he did the deal. And now, you know, he's put like 10 million into it. So that's another story. But, you know, I show up. You know, I have my agents show up. You go, bring them the comparables. There's a few appraisers up here, and they get the market and what's going on, and they want them to appraise. But I have had, in the past year, zero problem. And they'll tell you when they're at the house appraising, oh, this is not going to be a problem. I had one instance where he bought the house, I think, like 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago, for example, for $315. Yeah, it was like 4 months ago. And the road is too noisy for him. So we're selling it now for $342. And we also have multiple little offers, and they're financing. But so I forget my point. So just, oh God, oh, the appraiser. So he had just appraised it. And the guy put in, I don't know, a couple of new floors, the refrigerator, and the appraiser said, no problem. So higher end, no problem. Although, of course, you know, a lot of the higher ends do tend to be cash. But some, and I haven't even heard people that want to appraise it either, you know.
The thing about cash, though, is that it eliminates the appraisal issue for a seller.
Yes and no, because there are some buyers that do want to appraise it anyway. But of course, you know, if you have any savvy, you say it's not contingent upon it. But of course, you can appraise the property. But you don't want to relay that information with fear. So you show them what's been selling. It's out of control here. You know, last year, like when the whole COVID thing started, all of a sudden, every driveway that you could see was filled with cars. People were scrambling for rentals, you know, jonesing for them. And then everyone was looking. And we couldn't sell at that time. I think it was like one of the early weekends. There was a property down in LaGrange, you know, in sort of mid-lower Dutchess, you know, a mid-century, which of course is, you know, very desirable. He had like 30 showings in one weekend and got like 5 offers, but they had to show it. So I'm like, okay. And he would call, you know, we would call and coordinate on the phone. I'd be talking, are you there yet? Are you in the driveway? It just, you know, became out of control. And the inventory.
One second, Nancy, 1 second. Let's formally introduce you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just yakking away.
I heard it's out of control here. And with that, I think we're going to start the show. Where is here and what's out of control? So welcome to Boroughs and Burbs, the real estate conversation for New York City and New York's suburbs, which has been New Jersey, handled by Curtis Jackson, who's in the little box next to you. Long Island, we've done Westchester County, we've done Connecticut, we've done the suburb of Palm Beach, the suburb of Miami, and the suburb of LA. And for the first time ever, we're doing the suburb of Hudson Valley. Nancy Felcetto.
And Robin Horowitz is, I hear her.
And Robin Horowitz, any minute, the second half of the dynamic duo, the Irish twins.
You gotta get over here.
Irish twins.
Here she is.
Here she comes. Sorry, my wire's in the way. You can hear her clicking. You can take your glasses
So
off.
Nancy, welcome.
Nancy, welcome. All right. So we've got Nancy Felcetto and her fashionably late partner in crime, Robin Horowitz, who are experts in the Hudson Valley. And I think what we're starting the show is it's out of control, and I've never seen anything like it in 30 years. Did I get that right?
In 15 years up here, we saw it in the city. When we both worked in the city for a while. So we saw it there. But yeah, this is, yeah, just when you think you could relax.
Yeah, but the city was always on, 15% a year. Since we've been here, 500 in the last 5 years, with no exaggeration, between 300%, a house that somebody bought for $98,000.
Oh my God, that's right.
And in 3 years, we sold it. They did hardly anything to it for $579. Another one that was 600 and something, we sold for $1,550,000.
Oh, right, down the block.
So the numbers are, it's insane. It has a broad appeal, I think, is what it is here. You can be single or you can have just a partner or a friend.
Kids.
Or the appeal
Families.
to family now. And I think that broad appeal is not the only thing, but a lot of vertical cities now, COVID has made them rethink.
So I want to ask, where are you physically sitting now? Because I've got a map up on the screen.
We're in my house in Churchtown, which is in Taconic, in the post office of Hudson.
Okay, so I see Hudson up there at the top of the map.
Go to the right.
Where's that?
Right. No, I'm not in Hudson. We're in Taconic.
He's a city.
Yes.
All right. So if I leave the city and I head north.
I'm 8 miles outside of Hudson if you're going east, sort of outside of Hudson. Sorry, the map is so small.
Okay, should I make it bigger? Okay. So that's Rhinebeck in the middle of the screen. And if I head up the Hudson River and I go even further, there's Hudson.
Yep.
And that's where you're sitting today.
Can you just give us some perspective? How far is it from Rhinebeck to Hudson? What is that distance?
It's about 30 minutes, maybe. It's so Hudson, which is on the train stop, is on the an express stop. So it's 2 hours to Hudson from Manhattan. And it's about, so Rhinebeck is about 20 miles south of us and about maybe a half-hour drive, 25 minutes, if.
And
unless you drive fast.
It's not that many miles, but
25 minutes maybe.
It's about 25 minutes. And the Rhinecliff station is the stop right before Hudson. And Bard College, I went to Bard, so I kind of knew the area. And what happened with me and my Bard friends is we all went back to the city. I taught ballet, and then it was like, I couldn't pay my rent. So one of my students' parents said, why don't you try real estate? And so I did, and I stayed in it. But this, I've never seen, and I worked in the Hamptons market, the Mid-Island market, a New York City market, and now this one. And I've never seen anything like it. And it's not the last. The thing is, this is not the last pandemic we're going to have.
Yeah, you know what? And it's interesting that, as I was, mentioning before, when everything had started and everyone that had a second home came up here, what we've also noticed was, forget that there's no inventory now, is that it happened even prior, with these younger generations and boomers, moving away and retiring, we're in a global economy. So a lot of these people are doing startups, whether it's a brewery or a candle maker, or, they're opening restaurants. There's a,
There's not
a
just a
myriad
blown
of
glass guy or
hotels,
something.
glass blowing. So you can afford brick and mortar in these towns, whether it's Phoenicia or Hudson or Rhinebeck or Red Hook or, or Saugerties or Kingston is really happening as well. So it becomes more affordable to do things here because everything is global and online. So that's how a lot of them are selling, and it's affordable. They can have families here,
It's
that
also just to have the
be
control,
outside.
control over your environment.
What's the
Now-
range of prices? So, because what I'm beginning to learn is that for the first time on this show, we're talking about a place that's not commutable, not easily commutable. We're talking about a destination that is not a part of the regular commute. And I think COVID has shown a lot of us that the 5-day a week, 1 hour from the city is less important than it was a year ago or maybe 2 years ago. And therefore, it occurs to me that that's one of the drivers on why the Hudson Valley is so fashionable right now. And so with all this demand pouring out of the city, which is are they looking for second homes? Or are they saying, I can afford to commute 1 or 2 days a week into the city, occasional commute. I can afford to live out here full time. Which one do you think is driving the market more? Second homes or the occasional commute?
Well,
What's driving the market right now is there are second homes are
both,
still
I think.
coming,
Yeah.
but that's for the older. For the people now, the millennials, for instance, we just sold something to a high-end person at at a Google thing, for example, that would normally work at home, at an office in the past. And she normally would have stayed here with her husband, who's an attorney, all week long. I mean, to just, the weekend. I'm sorry, the weekend. Now, one of them stays here 4 days a week. The other one goes home.
But so a lot of these are additional homes. They're not people that are leaving New York for Hudson Valley.
Yeah, there are.
You know what? It's both. People also, a lot of people come with the intent they'll buy and eventually transition up here, and that's like Millie. So she just bought a house with her husband, and they were looking up to him. They ended up buying something like $460 because they're gonna gut it out, renovate it, and put more money into it. They have to rebuild the pool. It's like $500,000 worth of work. So a lot of people do come with the intention to eventually move up here. And you're also seeing a lot of people, trading down. But there are people that do commute maybe
Twice a week
because they can also work from here.
But it's 50-50 now.
Yeah.
There are people that are come here and they stay, and this is their primary residence. And a lot of people then sell their apartments in New York and get a pied-à-terre. And whoever does the majority of their work in the city goes to the city. I think we grew up part-time in the city, and it was a different time, and it was more, you had a middle class, you could live there, now it's for the rich, but no matter how rich you are, and you can't go to a Broadway play or the Joyce Theater for dance or to a museum, a lot of the reasons that keep people in vertical cities are gone. They're going to come back. They will. But my question also is to all of it, to all these cities, not the San Franciscos or the Portlands that have land and space, but the Chicago, New York, the real vertical cities. What are you going to do with your commercial space? I was blown away because I still go to the city twice a month. And when Bleecker Street started going empty about 5 years ago, when I started seeing those stores closing up, I was blown away. I mean, I lived on the Lower East Side when rents were only $7,000, and 10 years later they were 700.
And but also, when you were talking about pricing, so here's, and again, you do, like Robin said, you do get a mix of people looking to be full-time and looking to come as second homes, or you get a lot of people that are opening business. Like I use the Maker, for example. We've met many of the managers there. They've come from the city. They're loving Hudson. But to go to the price points for a moment. So the higher end, we're seeing $3, $4, $5 million properties selling, which has been an oddity for years.
Which buys you what?
You can get a 40-acre, 5,000, 6,000 square foot house, a guest house, a pool, historic.
40.
40 acres, or you can get a $3 million house on a lake with an acre. So it's varied. There's a myriad of it, there's
Or
so
we have a very well-known builder from New York City that wants to do 11 places here, 5 acres, from $1.6 million to $3 million. So the biggest desire up here is somebody either wants something that's historical or really super modern, and they rely on us a lot for suggestions
and design ideas. But again, getting back to the pricing for a moment. So, and as you just mentioned with the development, so let's say this gentleman wants to do, I think they're like 5 to 10, 12 acre lots, which is fine. People want privacy, but it's interesting where a lot of people don't want to have to maintain all the property. So you're getting a lot of land is selling, which I've never seen as much land moving before, because people can't find what they want. They're building, and they're building a modern home. So like you said, with historic homes and ultra modern homes have an inherent value. It's the homes in between which didn't sell. They're selling like
but
hotcakes.
you're trying to avoid the word development, because they're not, the person that's doing this is doing totally different homes
And that's
as
what,
per site.
and that's what several people have been doing up here. They'll do like 4 homes here, 4 homes down on another road in
Totally
the area.
different.
So of course, the price point that always is crazy up here is, let's say the 100 to 200,000 is now the 200 to 500,000 price point. Okay, that's a very busy price point, and it's incredibly competitive. And then you have another hot spot, which is 500 to $1 million, which is again very fast paced. And now we're seeing that 1 to 2 million price range, which is the most active, I think, for, again, the lower price point will always be active, but that 1 to 2 million range seems to be what used to be our $500,000,
Right,
sales
they've
would be
doubled, they've
crazy.
tripled. And it doesn't, there are people, a lot of people that are coming here. In New York, a lot of people are doing their purchasing investment. A lot of people here for investment, but also for lifestyle change. Having some control over your environment, no matter how wealthy you are in New York City, if you own a brownstone and they're doing construction next door, you're going to live with it. It doesn't matter how much money you have. When you're in a town, one of the towns surrounding Hudson or in Hudson, that you're not impacted by anybody else.
Right.
You're not getting the buses, the all that kind of crazy stuff. But the train transportation, believe it or not, is really, it's lovely. It's a great ride. It's right on the river, 2 hours.
Beautiful.
On the
And then you also have, when you're going east towards Massachusetts, you have a Wassaic line, which is the Metro North, the Metro North and the Amtrak. So you have on both sides. The other side of the river, which is Ulster County, which again, Kingston is really happening, and Woodstock and those areas, they don't necessarily have a train. So we're seeing a big, surge over here on this side of the river, the east side of the river. So it's interesting. But again, the other side of the river has incredible landscapes with the mountains. Each county seems to have its own beauty, and people covet the privacy and the quiet. And again, what's interesting, like even in the MLS now, they have, they ask about broadband and, what kind of service do you have? Because people are coming up here, suddenly they want, offices or guest houses, or they're going to build out something over the garage, to have their privacy. And in the new construction, you're seeing that type as well.
Are you completely dependent on New York? Because that's something we come to all the time on this show. We like to say out here in Connecticut, then when New York sneezes, Connecticut catches a cold, right? I mean, the Connecticut's a bedroom community of New York City. And it's the stock market professionals who are living here, buying up our $2 million, $3 million homes, media professionals, and they have to be close to the city. But I'm hearing a very different dynamic when you're 2 hours away. Are young families moving out there? Is it empty
Young families.
moving
And
out there? Is it really mostly 80% people leaving New York City and moving north, or are they coming from all directions?
You know what I find, and then I'll let you, because you have great things to say. A lot of people, yes, a majority is from Manhattan. They're also coming from Westchester. They're coming from Boston. They're coming from San Francisco. They're coming from LA. And these are people that also have, it's also a third home market, not just a second home market,
But that's
which is
small
interesting. Yeah, it's a small portion, but you're seeing that, especially in the higher end.
What drives people here a lot, besides everything else, is the aesthetic. It's gorgeous. The architecture is incredible. And the kind of shopping that you used to do in New York City, that when you walk around Nolita or Soho or the Lower East Side when it was happening, and you had that's what you have here in Williamsburg. You have a mile long Main Street
In Hudson.
in Hudson, and
Rhinebeck has
too.
great shopping, yeah.
Right. And
Kingston's cool too.
And there's great, like my friends drove up, there's plenty of museums. One is called Olana, and it's one of the early set of New York, the first set of New York artists that came, the School of
Hudson River
Artistry that came from New York, and watch the sunrise and sunset, and it's given everybody the opportunity for yoga and all that other, but now people are riding their bikes, and but there's been a lot of outdoor eating that's easier to do here and less expensive. And we've lost, obviously, the community is really what kept me here, that had me leave the city. The people is what is the most attractive to me, but I also am really visual, and I like to see great architecture, and what they're doing with the older architecture, adding on the new stuff, just works.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary.
Have you been here?
It's gorgeous up here.
I have. You know what? When I do, I loved. I think it's called Highway 9, and and it goes right up the Hudson. And so I get in my little convertible with my wife, and it's like a date, and we let's drive up the Hudson, and we check out all these cute little towns. And it is very picturesque. But I am always struck. How do people make a living here? And you started the show, and you said people are making candles, and they're making glass blowing, and they got farms. And I think to myself, well, it's a nice second home, but how do I make a living there? And I think of it like maybe the Hamptons, right? It's a place people escape to, but they don't actually, they make their money, and then they retire to the Hamptons. And Roberto's got a place in the Hamptons, and he spends more and more of his time in the Hamptons lately. So that's what I'm wondering is, are these places that used to be faraway destinations now becoming a place where you can actually do your job?
It's also day trippers come up here, but the hotels.
The difference between where you drive, when you say you drive up along 9, Hudson is really like the beginning, like Williamsburg, in terms of that. It's much more developed. A lot of people wouldn't have come here. There are a lot of New Yorkers that do need the Hootsy Tootsie coffee shops, and there are 8, 10, 9 of them, and wine and everything
restaurants
else.
Are here.
And great art. There's over 56 galleries just in Hudson alone. So it gives people an opportunity. Yes, you're right. Some people, you might have to have money already to be coming up here. And for instance, my friend from London came here. I had sold him a house about 6 years ago. He came here in March, just after it broke, just after COVID. And he was supposed to go back by April. He didn't go back until, but they let him work here. And he stayed here for almost 6 months. And he said there wasn't any other place he wanted to be at this kind of time. He did his work. They all did finance. They put their little sign on the door. It was cute. He had a couple of friends come up from the city. They all did their all finance, and then they got out in their pool and had a beer.
And you know, a lot of people also, they're opening breweries. There are coffee makers that sell nationally, internationally. There's bakers, there's bread companies, and they're all doing it up here, and they ship nationally.
And
So,
there was this fabulous
bread
train
company.
station that they're now making into a brewery. That's incredible, with a
Oh,
little
gosh,
train
yeah.
going right in front of it.
Can we talk a little bit about the product? Like, for the most part, is 90% of the product homes, freestanding separate homes? Is there any sort of multi-family component there in your inventory? Like where there's, condos or anything like that? And then also I want to ask you about taxes. How are the taxes?
It's New York. I'm finding new construction, let's say 2, 3, 4, 2 to 5,000 square feet. You're going to be paying, 14 to 30,000 in taxes. If not, some are more. It's New York.
It depends on how long somebody lived there. It's very, like, if they keep
They don't
flipping
obsess.
over, then keep going higher and higher. If somebody had a house for 50 years, your jump isn't going to be as high.
Yeah, they
with
don't
your
want to. They don't want to
taxes.
kill you. And each town has, their own way of doing things. So multi-houses. There are little. There's not really any condos here. There's some townhouses in Tivoli. There's some in
And in
Rhinebeck and
Hudson.
Hyde Park. There's in Hudson, like regular homes, but there's a complex of townhouses at the top of a hill with a river view. Same thing. There's one in Hyde Park. There's one, they're in Catskill. A lot of people do buy multi-homes more in a city-centric environment like Rhinebeck, Red Hook, Hudson, or Kingston or so forth. But then there are other people that buy with the guest house, they rent out their guest house. They
Or
Airbnb the
Airbnb.
pool house or the guest house. So you find a lot of, especially the younger generation, come here and ask, can I Airbnb? It's like one of their first questions, aside from what's the Wi-Fi situation. So they do ask those questions, and they do that. Or you get people that want to have, they may buy land and build 2 houses. One they'll sell, one they'll keep, like what Dennis did.
Right.
So, you do get that here, but they do ask about Airbnb, because when people aren't here, a lot of them rent their houses, because people are getting some heavy rents, which we never saw before here either. It
What's a
wasn't.
heavy rent? Is it a seasonal rental?
I've seen
No.
things for 30, 40,000 a month
Okay.
in season, but then you can rent for like 4, 5, 6,000 would be an average. It's very hard now, like in Hudson, where one bed is $2,000 now.
Yeah, you start from
If
about
they're nice.
You start from about 2,000. You're for 2,000 now.
Yeah.
And we have people that are jumping, literally, that have been here since the summer, since March, and have been jumping from Airbnb to Airbnb, as they get kicked out of not kicked out, but they don't have the reservations, desperate to find something.
Right, or rent while they're building.
If they can
There's a
find
market
something
for
to do
that.
that.
While they're doing that, or while they're renovating. So we're just seeing that. I've never seen a rental market like that.
I think the next, what struck me in the very beginning was, this is not 9/11. This is totally different.
Right.
This is going to be something that's going to continue to happen. This is not going to be our first pandemic, unfortunately. And unless we get a hold of, as we are hoping now politically, to get something moving, these germs and whatever are still going to come, and the destruction of our environment is still going to happen. People have to adjust their lifestyle to that. I love living in New York City and growing up part of my life there, but I wouldn't honestly want to be there now, because I went to the joystick. I went to theater, went to concerts. That was my thing. So I don't even know what I would do now.
You know what? When you talk about the
I
environment,
walk my dog.
Wait,
That's what I would do.
when you talk about the environment, you know what else they're doing up here? A lot of solar companies, and you can make a lot of money leasing out some, a couple of acres of your property. They're also hemp farming and looking to do marijuana farming. Now, so we're seeing people buying land just for those purposes. There's one chick, I think, Marette had a buyer, and she has a big hemp company. No, she does the CBD. So she bought something with a little barn on it to do her business here. So we're also seeing a lot of that going on. which is interesting. Like we have across the river in Catskill, one of my agents has it used to be a water plant, a bottling plant or whatever. It's been on the market for a while. And he's got one person is looking to do marijuana. Another person, what the hell, they
It's
want
already
to, or
legal
they want to
across
do a
the-
solar farm.
But they're
So
right across the Massachusetts border. You can, it's already
it's legal. So they're in, I have one of my attorneys that we use up here. He and a bunch of guys invested in CBD. So they bought some land and they're growing. So that's starting to really happen here.
Can we talk about the land? You said land is increasing and there's a lot of demand for, you have so much land. Are there builders that are buying swaths of land in order to deal with the inventory problem too?
Well, you're
We
very,
don't have
certain
so much
counties,
land.
there's not a lot of land, quite frankly, but you're very restricted. A lot of people years ago put a majority of their properties in conservancy. They get there's a great tax
That's what I
incentive.
love.
Plus, people don't want tract housing. Each county is different. Like Dutchess County, when you're south, is a little more
Hoity-toity.
suburban, if you will. In Columbia County, they covet the land. They're very restrictive in certain things. Like there's a subdivision of 15 lots that I've been showing, and he did it in the 1989. He divided that. So it's a little more challenging to find to do that. So I recommend, like one of my around the block from me, it was a referral from development marketing, that he's looking to do. And the difficulty is finding large tracts of land that are subdividable. So our suggestion is, like the guy in Dutchess is doing, do 4 houses here, 3 houses there. So it's easier to get approvals that way and to subdivide it that way, or it's already subdivided into several lots. Because again, the tax incentives, the ag exemptions can be really great, especially with New York taxes. So that's another incentive.
But-
I had a neighbor once, he gave 5 acres to someone to grow corn, and he got a tax.
But what
break.
I would say, what
ask
people have
questions.
learned, oh, did you want to ask something?
I just want to ask like a practical example. I just want to ask a practical example. Let's say I come to you guys and say, look, I want to buy something up there somewhere. I got $1 million to spend. Where are you telling me to go?
I wanted to ask that question.
What are my
What do
options?
you want?
My
Your favorite.
suggestion to somebody that has $1 million that doesn't want to live in Hudson or Rhinebeck, let's say,
Like in the city
doesn't-
environment.
and wants, but I would not recommend to anybody to want to buy more than 20 minutes from a place where you can get restaurants and have your kids go to karate.
So anywhere between Rhinebeck and actually Hudson is fair.
That's the
Yeah, you know
primus.
what? Yeah, like in, let's say in Ulster County, if you're near Saugerties, and again, if you're on the outskirts
That's
of Kingston, Woodstock is really happening. New Paltz, Dutchess County, like Clinton Corners, Milan, are just, and they're convenient to certain areas
All
along
the way
there.
out to Millbrook.
Millerton is fabulous. It's got a great little town there, like in Northeast also. In Columbia County, pretty much anywhere. But some people don't like to go too north. But then again, there's a lot of what are they called?
Millbrook, can I just give you, Millbrook to Chatham?
Yeah,
Is where,
our favorite
yes,
areas.
not only our favorite areas, but
Most
that's
Millbrook, where's Chatham?
Chatham is north
North
of
of
Hudson. If you go past
Oh my
Livingston,
gosh.
keep going. It's maybe 2.5 to 3 hours tops.
from the city.
I see Old Chatham.
Yeah,
That's
it's
beautiful.
gorgeous.
Oh,
Oh my
Chatham is
God.
Horse
So-
farms, the old school, really unbelievable. And those people are people that have been there for
Excuse me.
generations and have kept them. It's a really cliquish kind of waspy. I don't know what, I know I shouldn't say that word. But it's visually stunning. And
Simple question.
yeah,
From New York to Albany is at 3 hours, right? 3
Right.
hours to get to Albany. And you've been talking mostly about the northernmost third of that. Does that mean that everything up to, say, Newburgh and Wappinger Falls, the first hour out of the city is not that exciting? It's not that rural. It's not that picturesque. I got to get
it's
2 hours.
suburban.
Do I have to get 2 hours out of the city or to 3 hours out of the city in order to get that really farmland look and factories along the Hudson that are reclaimed and now have been made into breweries, that kind of.
Well, Millbrook.
There are pockets like Cold Spring area is really pretty, and that's not
That's
far
totally
out of the city. I know, but it's the Hudson Valley. So, and that also has popular, and also Pauling, like in Putnam County, and areas in Putnam County are gorgeous as well. I guess because we kind of don't focus there, but Pauling is beautiful, and that's down south. And
Bedford
areas
is
in
that
Putnam,
one-
Bedford, yeah.
Bedford's popular.
What's that?
Yeah.
Bedtown.
Wouldn't you
But I
say
would say-
during COVID, it's fashionable to be 2 to 3 hours outside of the city? But don't you think that now, as the city begins to open back up and people want to go to the Metropolitan Museum and go see the Mets game, that it's going to be important for people to be commutable from the city?
Well,
And
our
it's
friends,
always been.
Yankee games.
our friends that work in the city still have told us something interesting. The buyers that are coming back to the city are coming back because it's affordable to them. They're not family. They're not the typical New York City buyer. A lot of the New York City buyers that would have only kept this as a second home, or a Hamptons house as a second home, now are making these their major homes, and pied-à terres in the city, or keeping their apartments depending on the amount of wealth they have. I do think it's going to change, but I don't think it's going to change that much here. I think the demand, and just friends talking to friends, because we get a lot of referrals from a friend that bought something, and then they'll come and we'll go to a barbecue and 8 other people will come and we'll be playing that beanbag game, and they'll be like, oh my God, I can do this, or I can do this on the weekends. And you're not budgeting 15 minutes at a time, your life.
Also, Beacon is really cool too.
Beacon
if you
is
want to
really
go
cool.
down south.
Beacon would be where I would start.
Cold Spring, Beacon.
If I were going to tell somebody to start where something's hip, I don't, whatever word you want to use.
Anymore.
No, I mean something that's that's going to have, wine, things that you want to do. I would say Beacon
It's
would be where to
convenient.
start,
Not mine.
and Chatham would be that, and avoiding Poughkeepsie, Nyack, and those areas.
Although Highland is on the waterfront of Poughkeepsie, which is also getting really cool.
And Westchester, is totally different. Westchester is the sub.
All right, is this a fair analogy?
It's Connecticut.
Is this a fair analogy?
No offense.
I mean, I see a study in contradictions. I mean, I see fabulous wealth, and yet and fabulous amounts of land, and yet you tell me there's a great deal of it is already off the table. It's in conservation. So I look at a combination. In some respects, I look at parts of your market as, say, the Hamptons was back when my parents were looking at it in the 70s, where
Right.
back in East Hampton still had a bunch of potato fields,
Right.
and yet it had an artistic community with Jackson Pollock and the others, So there was an artistic community. You've got that. You've got farming. The Hamptons had that. And people discovered the Hamptons was the best place to get out of the city. And it sounds like you're having the best year of your career, because New York has suddenly discovered that is a combination of the arts and ruralness and a slower lifestyle. Is it too late for Roberto Cabrera and his $1 million to get out there? Is everybody just going crazy, and this is like a high-flying internet stuff?
There's a lot of affordable properties here, and also just going to the farm thing, all the farm to table. There's a lot of farms up here that also bring their food into the city. So,
But you're speaking about the Hamptons.
The store's small.
Southampton, when I first went to look there with my ex, there were beautiful houses right near town. Nobody wanted to be right near town. It was, and that's how it was first here.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to be right in Hudson. And then you start redoing these architecturally brilliant houses, and then people feel like, oh, I'm in the city, I can walk get my coffee, I can walk and get something, or if I have kids, I can walk with the kids. You know, it has a broad appeal and it's easy, you
And,
know.
oh, and sorry. And also talking about, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Mhm.
Just talking about business and design. This architects are doing really well up here. So, you know, there's that market as well. So they're building, they're renovating, they're doing things. There's, you know, those careers up here and a lot of lawyers as well.
And
As
there's
someone who's-
also the barns, there's people have gotten together. Well, no, somebody's bought a building and made a number of office spaces for people to
WeWork
want to
space.
be, yeah. We work spaces, we have a couple of beautiful ones, so people can go away from home and feel like they're in an office
And
doing
he's
their
opened
thing.
3. He's in Hudson, Kingston, and I
Right
forget
now.
where else. I think no, somewhere. I don't know.
Anyway, we
somewhere.
talk too much, so yeah.
Ask us questions.
Well, you know, or if you're not, or you know,
Or,
whatever.
or
you
we
wanna
could just
do.
keep talking.
So where are you telling, so tell,
Where do you want to be?
between Rhinebeck and Hudson, where's my $1 million? Where should I put it?
Oh, Germantown, perhaps.
Livingston, Germantown,
Germantown,
Flat Rock.
Taconic.
But why are you giving me that? Like, why? Because that's still got a lot of potential growth. It's a beautiful area. It's growing. It's young. What is the?
It has beautiful architecture.
They all do.
But
That's
well,
the oddity.
that's it. It's
Yeah.
and those are and they don't have, and honestly, they don't have a lot of trailers, and you know there is
Trailers.
the best, though, the towns that you want to be in, the towns we just named we name them because they are close to Hudson, but they also have beautiful history. They, you know, great houses that you do house tours with. You know, you have apple picking, pumpkin picking, all the stuff, you know, the nursery school stuff, that nursery rhyme stuff that people think of. It's what you know, like what a little kid thinks of, like in their magic kingdom or something.
You know
what it looks
there's
like.
a lot of affordable areas that you can go. Really kind of, some people come up here, they're house buyers. Obviously, as we all in real estate, we know there's a house buyer. So then you guide them to certain areas for what they're particularly looking for. And then there are location buyers, but most people, like you say, they do want to be near convenience. Like Hillsdale's really cool. And again, like I've just been showing some things, you know, across the river, of course, in Ulster County, in Saugerties, because people just want to be there. So there's a lot of musicians up here, well-known musicians, a lot of well-known actors. There's a lot of, you know, writers, and they like it because they're private. No one bothers them. So, you know, nobody who's who kind of thing going here. So people can be anonymous.
Yeah.
And they sit in the cafes and they write and they do, they do their business and they do their work there. So you're seeing that. And again, the entrepreneurial spirit, but there are affordable homes in all the counties. You know, there's always something that you can find it, and it would go to us to guide you to where you want to be. Because my friend who came up here, she was sending me properties 3 hours here, 2 hours there, and we kind of narrowed it down. And after going to certain different counties, she decided, because her daughter's going to get married in Columbia County, they decided after visiting them all that they felt this was where they wanted to be. And they did end up buying in Columbia County. Had other people that end up buying, you know, they want to be in, again, you look around, you see where you're most comfortable, and then they zone in on an area, because there's so many territories and locations that do have appeal to anybody.
Well, you know,
Well,
it depends. You
I
like
think-
you said, you know, I have to pull a lot of times pull myself away because I need to be near a Beacon or a Hudson or a Chatham or I need to be near where the bookstore is and you know, coffee shops and all that, and you know, and Pilates and yoga and all that, which will come back. But it is we are waiting kind of for a change, but still today,
What kind of a change?
I don't know what's going to happen. Because the thing is, the demand is still so much greater than the supply that, you know, people
Are the towns letting builders build, or they really don't want to change?
No, you know, you get people that have
It's
been
pretty
here for
easy.
200 years. Well, they're not 200 years old, but they're generational.
Like
they're
the old
selling their,
people on the
they're
co-op,
selling
isn't that
their,
Curtis?
you know what? They're selling their land because they are cashing out.
But
So
there
they've
are
had
some-
it for like, yes, exactly. But they've
How
had it
important,
for time.
how
But-
important is the river? So what I see is that the Hudson Valley is dominated by this river that goes right down the middle of it. The most important thing on Long Island is the beaches, right? Everybody wants to be on the coast. So it occurs to me the inverse is true here. Everybody wants to be close to the river. All the hip towns are on the river. All the cool architecture began on the river. And the further you get away from the river, is it fair to say the more land you can get, the less price you're going to pay for that land. So there's so you could get 40 acres if you're willing to get further from New York and further from the river. But the closer you get to the river, you get to civilization, commerce, those hip coffee shops. Is that true? Is it all centered on the
Yes and no.
And very few people want 40 acres, to be quite honest.
Anymore. There
Yeah.
are some that do.
If there's a few.
But the river view is a
a
hard to
big deal.
find and is a big deal. But you also have the mountains. So people go when you're going, let's say now you're on east of the Hudson River, for example, whether it's Dutchess or Putnam, wherever you are. So if you're going, now you have the Taconic Parkway, which, takes you east of the Taconic or west of the Taconic, because when you're going east of the Taconic, you have the conveniences of Connecticut, you have the conveniences of Massachusetts. Like there's cool towns on that area. Well, you can go to Salisbury, Connecticut from Millerton, for example, which a lot of people do go and shop there. Or you can go to Great Barrington. Hillsdale's really close. So, and you have these majestic mountain views. But yes, the more you go away from the river, you can obtain larger tracts of land because there are those people that covet their privacy. They're very private people. They're exorbitantly wealthy and they don't want anyone on their lands. They've got the gated fences and so on. But yeah, the river is pretty.
It's
drive.
a pull.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of people that are buying 5 and 6 properties. They just fall in love with it, and they are Airbnb it, or they do
Little
small
hotels,
inns, little hotels.
Like one,
And well, I don't know how that's gonna go, but there's a place called The Maker, which he's pumped over $15 million into it, and it's incredible.
Extraordinary.
Much better than most of New York. Any New York lounge or
he's
amazing.
and he's branding, and you should really look it up. It's absolutely extraordinary because we sold him those buildings. We seem to sell all the
We
hotels.
sold him a bunch of his houses.
And his houses. So that is anywhere from.
Which township is that in?
That's in Hudson, and it's like up to $1,500 a night. Some ballerina was just there of the he owned Fresh, the company Fresh. So he's going to be branding this all over the world. Then we sold this young guy, and he bought 2 little inns, the Nest, that he calls the Nest. Then he bought a third property, David's building, which has like 6-7 rooms. Then he just bought a hotel which just has 16 rooms, and we're going to go look at something this weekend to add to his collection.
And the more affordable, it to be close to Hudson and in the more affordable area with a little town, Catskill is a great little town.
The Lumberyard.
It has a huge dance, a lot of dancers, because dancers, I was a dancer. So, and they're the worst paid of all, people that perform. But they've found a place here that with an incredible stage right on the river, it's come up.
The Lumberyard. I don't know if you guys
started in the Hamptons, but it has so there's all different arts. And when you go, and that's 10 minutes from Hudson, only it's on the other side of the river, and that's where you're still getting some deals.
We're also,
Athens,
I was gonna just say that.
another town.
Because Athens is a very historic little town, and there's a little bakery, there's some fabulous houses, and on the river, there's the Stewart Hotel. So people can go across the river. There's a ferry that goes in season to take you across the river, because again, Athens has their waterfront, and it's really pretty, and you don't have the train tracks on that side of the river. So when you're west of the river, you don't have the train tracks. So you have the little towns like Catskill, Athens, Coxsackie, and very historic.
And you get to eat, little restaurants that are great on the river, and they have the thing where you rent those water things. I don't know what
paddleboards.
And
So there's a good question in the chat window, and it says, so the most consistent and historic value in the region are mountain and river views, and then after that falls just mountain, and then land itself. When I hear that from Chris Pomeroy in the chat window, I think you're not competing with the Hamptons. You're not competing with New Jersey. You're not competing with Connecticut. You guys look like Vermont. If I'm a wealthy New Yorker and I'm willing to go 3 hours, then I'm probably looking to get way out of town. Then I'm probably looking at places like Vermont and Maine and the Hudson Valley.
they're much.
I don't understand, because you're a suburb of New York City that behaves more like Vermont than any of these other suburbs.
If I had to compare more than anything, it would be like like a Martha's Vineyard
A
vibe,
lot of vineyard
and
people
Nantucket
here.
vibe.
A lot
A lot of people from Martha's Vineyard are here, have opened up shops, and definitely, but not. And there is skiing here and things like that. But
Golf.
I love Chris Pomeroy, but he hasn't been here for years. And I love Chris, and he would be amazed at what he did. He helped drive all the prices up here, so. It's a matter of who.
Hey, Chris Pomeroy, chime in. Go ahead.
Talk up,
Talk up,
Chris.
Chris.
We love you. And you know what? There's also
He helped drive the prices
you
up.
also have the cabin in the woods and streams and lakes and stuff like that. It's like it's.
That leads me to another question. From a
Yes.
brokerage perspective, how competitive is it up there for you? How many people?
Very.
Very.
It's insane.
That's a new thing, or it's always been?
No, just recently, because people followed us here, and there's some great brokers up here. So there is, and then
And
Compass
Corcoran,
opened. Compass bought something. Corcoran's franchise. They franchised up here. So, but none of them have listings either.
And Leonard had a house in Saugerties
He sold
for
that.
15 years.
And he has a
ago, yeah.
restaurant, a partner in a restaurant in Rhinebeck. So, but you know what? Again, I always find that, we're very close with a lot of the brokers up here, because you're going to be doing business with them constantly. So, we kind of work amongst ourselves, like the old adage, if 10% do 90% of the business. So we all kind of communicate with each other and help each other out. I give a lead on something if you're going to get it, or they ask, do you have a buyer? Or
But you're 100% right, because I was in the Hamptons when I left. I did not want to meet another dentist. I didn't want to wait at another light. I do a couple of
traffic.
I didn't want to at work, and I didn't want to care about what the frig I was wearing. I didn't want to care how high my heels were, and so I did. You're right. You're 100% right. It is a dip. It's not the Hamptons. It's not
congested.
Vermont.
Is there an
It's
It's the
off,
Hudson Valley.
is there an off market?
Not anymore. It's 12 months a year. Is that what you mean?
In the sense of like, there's sellers who have a property and they don't want to put it on the market. They say, look, I've got this property. I'll sell it for $2 million. I don't want to put it on the market. And you go and you talk to Chris and whoever and say, look, I've got something. Do you have anybody? And vice versa.
I did it
Me too.
yesterday. I had
And
just give me some just give me
An
some
hour ago.
photos. And give me some photos, and I'll send them out.
Shop it around.
Yeah. And people do now want to get into things before they go on the market, because they're inevitably going to be in a price. They're going to be in a price
Multiple offer
war.
situation.
So a guy like Roberto with his $1 million who wants a deal, he needs to hook up with an experienced agent who can look under every rock in the Hudson Valley and find him things that are off market.
And somebody that knows how to negotiate. I mean, that's the other side of it. Because
We're very respected.
Yeah, and if you're willing to put in the time and you're realistic, you are going to find something. And if you find the bones of something that's great and the price is what is good, there are incredibly talented contractors up here that that will do anything. And for every dollar you spend
Literally.
here, you will make money. That wasn't always the case.
How about, because I would imagine, because it's so spread out and, it's really hard to compare different properties. From a standpoint of a comp, what is the most common metric or the main one or two metrics? Is it's got to be property, it's got to be the size of the land and then the square footage, but then what else is there?
Interesting that you say that, because a lot of, again, as we all know, we all deal in appraisals, a lot of them don't even go in the homes. So it's really the age of the home. Yes, the size of the property. They look at the view and the conditions and
like,
location.
And like 2 miles with where the crow flies, well, they'll usually use that. And they don't use, like they used to have 3 ways to do appraisals.
Yeah, no,
they
it's
don't
not.
do that anymore. So it basically is to find things that are similar, not what the cost of building to get the exact same thing again. Those they use really one way.
Yeah, and you can, there's good parameters to do that. And again, as I mentioned before, I haven't really had any problems in any price point, based on what is.
But she goes, and you have to. A lot of agents are lazy everywhere.
Oh wait, Chris, if it's a 200-year-old house, we find older homes, historic homes, to compare them to, to price them out to. So they take that into account. Yes, 200 is an early home, like we just sold one down the road. Thank you to Adam Flax and Curtis Jackson.
Yes.
That was an 1800 or 1803. We couldn't figure it out. Property with 40 some odd acres, utterly charming and
We've known them
delightful.
since they're 4 years old.
Yes, Curtis. And Adam.
Anna.
Yeah. So, you look for them and you find them. If typically when I do it, it's like I'll go from, I don't know, they don't really exist, but for some reason I'm insane with my research. I'll just put in 1600 to like 1930, and then I'll analyze myself and go through them all and make my selections based on size and condition and view as well to bring for an appraisal.
So when you look at your data, how much do you estimate in the town of Hudson are second homes? Are we 50%?
I would say that's about where you are now.
Yeah.
When Chris was here, it was very different. Chris would help.
He saw the beginning.
He was here at the beginning, and he was started to drive the prices up because his clients were those kind of clients, and his clients were able to see the potential. But right now, before, you might have 20% of the houses in Hudson. About in the last 5 years, it's been about
so full,
at least 50% full time.
Yeah.
And since COVID, I would say 80%.
Are you seeing anybody come back
of the people that are
to the city?
staying here?
I'm sorry?
Are you seeing anybody come back to the city? They're saying, you know what? Manhattan's actually affordable. Now I'm going to consolidate here. This is my opportunity.
Some people they cash out. You know what is also interesting? There are several women that we've met, like Annie and my neighbor here and Sheldon. Women, people that have had houses here for 30 and 40 years, and the husband passes away. So now they're selling, and they have their apartments in the city, and they seem to be they're in their 70s and maybe early 80s, and they are more comfortable in Manhattan.
And they're going back to Manhattan.
They're going back to their apartments in the city and selling their properties up here. Some of them, the 3 more.
It's both that
they're waiting the winter out before they decide what to do.
But it's the oldest and the younger ones that are taking advantage, that want to be in the city. Those that have never really had the opportunity to experience the city because it was unaffordable to them, and now can get a rental in the city for a reasonable price. And the older people here that have had houses here for years already have houses, a lot of them on the Upper West Side.
But a lot of them are single. They're widows.
They're widows.
They're widows.
Yeah.
Gosh, that just seemed to be, again, they've been here 30, 40 years. So they're cashing out, and they're making a lot of money.
It's 5:02. We gotta, at some point, we gotta wrap this up with a bow, nice big bow. So
All right.
give me the forecast for the next couple of years, and what this looks like. Because what I'm hearing is it's hot, And I hear it's fantastic up there for a number of reasons. We got a red hot stock market. We got low interest rates. We got a COVID causing people to try new areas outside the city. And so what you're saying is that you think that this is going to be sustainable, and this is a good long-term bet, the Hudson Valley, that the value is there, and you don't see the COVID causing this to reverse. When the vaccines are out, you don't see a flight back to the city. You see this as a good long-term trend.
I believe so, because we've seen it for 15 years and are being up here, and that there's still a lot more growth potential. There's a lot of homes that need to be fixed up. There's, again, people are building. So I do feel that.
I have a friend, we went to another
Excuse me.
friend's house. It's worth about $1 million. She started a company called Loop. It's a clothing company. And she was going to go back, and she was determined to go back and they're not. It's a conversation for a lot of the couples up here, the younger couples. And now a lot of the people that had bought houses here are now buying the commercial property in Hudson for and whatever's left. Again, the commercial property here isn't like in New York City, because it's not, the cost isn't there. You don't have a CVS and a Dwayne Reed and a Starbucks. On every corner. Like I would wake up in the morning and
there's one in Rhinebeck, there's one in Hudson.
And the Zeckendorf Towers, and I walked down the block, and all of a sudden, what was there? Now it's a Starbucks and a Dwayne Reed. What was there? There was a little porn shop over there, but on 3rd Avenue. But it's just such a different place. And I'm sure New York City is going to but I'm not, I think it's going to take some imagination to know what you're going to do with the ground floor of the
and offices, work at home,
Yeah, but you can always turn those into apartments. The ground level of commercial New York City, Chicago, there.
She just transitioned the whole New York market. There you go.
I don't know. My dream would be like when I lived in South Beach, and before anybody was there, and Lincoln Road Mall had nothing there, but the Miami Ballet, which was stunning, used to practice there, and I would go there and walk my dogs there. Now it's $1 zillion condos, but I would go there and I would watch them rehearse, and it was magnificent. And I thought in New York City, if they could do nonprofits and have things like that, and windows that people wanted to look in, that wasn't, it wasn't a CVS or a Starbucks. Might help. I don't know, things to go around, but I can't figure out how to do the ground level of these cities.
Well, this is clearly a great time for New York's reinvention.
Yeah,
Hudson Valley's reinvention. I think Connecticut is happy that we've been reconsidered by a lot of businesses and a lot of people. It's a very exciting time in America. There's a lot of energy and a lot of optimism, and we're feeling good in Connecticut. I know Roberto's feeling pretty good about the New York market, and I'm so glad to have met you two and to get a taste of the Hudson Valley and the market and your optimism and enthusiasm. I had it figured out as being kind of like Vermont, but no, and kind of like, the Hamptons, but no. So this was a great hour. Thank you both.
It's kind of like an old Soho or.
We're all very lucky.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
Thanks guys very much.
Yeah. Nice meeting
Bye.
everybody.
Nice meeting you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Curtis. I love you.
Bye,
And Chris.
Curtis. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
John?
Have a good night.
Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Love you.